I eased into the club's parking lot just after sunset, keys in hand and my mind already on the work report waiting at home. But I froze when I spotted Jessica's Prius and Coach Michael's black SUV flanking her car. Through the half-open driver's window, I caught the curl of cigarette smoke drifting into the cabin, sharp and acrid against the sweet California air. Heart pounding, I slipped behind Jessica's door and leaned in. The low hum of distant traffic on Sunset Boulevard mingled with the faint thump of a tennis ball against a backboard somewhere beyond the lot. Inside, Jessica sat close to Michael on the passenger seat, their knees brushing as he leaned forward, voice low. I could see the glow of her phone screen illuminating her profile, the edges of her lips curved into a smile I'd thought was reserved for me. I tasted bitterness in my mouth, not from coffee, but coppery shock. Fingers twitching, I glanced at my wrist, the silver tennis watch she'd bought me for my last birthday, its second hand still clicking in time. It felt suddenly heavy, a metronome counting down the rhythm of betrayal. I forced my jaw to unclench and backed away, every step measured. Stay calm, I told myself. Observe. No outburst. Yet my pulse drummed so loudly I half expected the world to hear it. A stray breeze rattled the car's cooling vents. I leaned against the hood and watched them. Michael brushed ash from Jessica's lap into a small plastic cup, her makeshift ashtray, and she laughed, the sound soft and intimate. She'd said she was helping our son practice serves tonight. Instead, she'd gone to late-night, training sessions that turned into smuggled cigarettes and secret smiles. I closed my eyes, tasting the acrid smoke I'd never smelled in her car before. Home is where she was supposed to be. I breathed through my nose, filling my lungs with exhaust and city air, trying to steady my hands. When I opened my eyes, Michael slid off the driver's seat and extended a hand. "Hey, John, didn't see you there." His voice was calm, practiced. Jessica sat up, guilt flickering across her face. I spared him a silent nod and shifted my gaze to her. Her usual floral perfume was gone, replaced by something darker, musky, foreign. "John," she began, eyes wide. I swallowed, tasting copper again. "Not here, not now." I cleared my throat. "I came by to pick up his racket," I said evenly, nodding toward the trunk where our son's bag Saturday, you know, for tomorrow's match. My voice felt strange, distant. She gave me a shaky smile. "Oh, of course. I'll grab it." She reached for the ashtray and the cup, tucking them into the center console. I stepped forward, retrieved the tennis bag, and closed the trunk. The screen of her phone lay on the passenger seat, still glowing with a half-read message from Michael, "Wish you were here." I resisted the urge to grab it. Instead, I lifted the silver watch from my wrist and held it out. "For your support," I said softly, pressing its cool metal into her palm. "Remember when you said we'd always have time for each other?" She looked down at the watch as though seeing it for the first time, her smile faltering. I let the second hand tick away the last of our easy trust. I gave a quiet nod, hoisted the racket bag, and walked away. The click of my shoes on asphalt felt final, each step carrying me back toward the house, and onward into whatever came next. In the fading light, I slipped the watch into my pocket and whispered to myself, "This is where I begin." That night, sleep eluded me. In the darkness, I reached out to the nightstand and touched the silver tennis watch, Jessica's gift, its steady tick more comforting than any word. I imagined time rewinding, back to when our life felt unbreakable. I remembered our first date at Griffith Park, early spring air scented with eucalyptus and jasmine. She wore a light scarf, I nervously carried a thermos of coffee because I'd convinced myself she'd want cocoa. We sat on a bench overlooking the city lights, laughter bubbling when I spilled coffee on her sleeve. She'd shrugged it off, smiling as she dabbed at the stain. "It's a memory," she said, "and I love the story that goes with it." That story once meant everything. At home, we wove rituals that felt as solid as those oaks above us. Saturday mornings were pancake mornings, blueberries from the farmer's market, eggs cracked in rhythmic cadence, syrup pooled in perfect golden circles. Our son, bleary-eyed, would toddle in wearing mismatched socks, demanding a pancake taller than his head. She'd lift him onto the stool, flour dusting her hair, and we'd watch him gleefully smear butter across his first bite. Those mornings felt like proof our family was unshakable. In summer, we turned our small backyard into a weekend project. I handled the saw, cutting weathered boards for a new deck, while she mixed stain and carefully brushed each plank. The cedar scent hung between us as we worked side by side, my strokes precise, hers artistic. At day's end, we collapsed onto the rough-hewn planks with cold drinks in hand, watching fireflies dance above the grass. I marveled at how her eyes glowed in that twilight, so alive, so present. Evenings after bedtime were our refuge. I'd pour us a glass of red, she'd open her laptop to review slides for work, and I'd lean over her shoulder, pointing out any awkward phrasing. She'd laugh, leaning back into me, tracing lines in my hair with a tired finger. We'd end the night on the couch, candle flickering, trading stories from our days. I told her about triumphs in the office, she told me about breakthroughs with our son's serve. Then we'd plan the weekend's chores with an ease born of mutual trust. But somewhere in those routines, tiny cracks began to appear, whispers I brushed aside. It started with the late-night pings. I'd hear her phone buzz at 11:30 p.m., its screen lighting up the dark bedroom. She'd murmur, "One sec," and slip into the living room. I waited, trusting her return. When she came back 10 minutes later, she'd kiss my cheek and promise, "Just a quick work check." I'd roll over and sleep, believing her. Then I spotted the receipts. I was reconciling our joint account one morning and noticed a charge for Mocha Mist Cafe, $9.25 at 8:45 p.m. on a Tuesday. I frowned, she never stopped for coffee on weeknights. When I asked, she sighed. Long day. Needed a boost. I nodded, letting the unease slip away. Until it happened again, another mid-evening coffee run. And again. Each time, I swallowed doubt in favor of comfort. Our son's tennis tournament on a Saturday afternoon brought another clue. I saw Jessica whisper to Coach Michael as he tightened our son's grip on his racket. Their heads bent together, voices low. I chalked it up to strategy talk. But on the drive home, I caught a whiff of stale cigarette smoke in her hair, something she'd never allowed in our house. I mentioned it, and she laughed awkwardly. The courts get smoky sometimes. I let it go. Later that week, I borrowed her tablet to check our shared calendar. I found a hidden messaging app tucked beneath her productivity tools. Curious, I tapped it open and saw a thread with a user named Courtmaster. The top messages were innocuous: "Great job at the match, nice serve tonight," but deeper in, I found lines I couldn't dismiss: "I wish I didn't have to sneak out," and "I can't stop thinking about our last night together." My heart pounded, but I scrolled further, capturing the earliest entries. I printed those messages on the color printer in our home office, then stared at them until the paper blurred. I placed the printout in my desk drawer labeled "To Review," alongside the coffee shop receipts. Each item felt heavy with meaning. I closed the drawer, sliding the silver watch back onto my wrist. Its tick felt urgent, time to decide whether to confront suspicion or preserve denial. That weekend, I attended a neighborhood barbecue. Emily's laughter rippled across the yard, and I watched her confidently arm wrestle our son for a prize cupcake. Later, I overheard friends whisper, "I saw her with Coach Michael at the courts after dark." I turned to her, framed by twinkling lights. She smiled at me, oblivious, and I lifted my beer in a silent toast to memories now tinged with doubt. That night, I lay in bed, sliding my fingers across the watch's cool band. Beneath every fond recollection, pancakes, deck boards, candlelit evenings, I felt the weight of unanswered questions. I resolved to gather every clue: receipts, texts, whispered rumors. No outbursts. No collapse. With that promise, I slipped from bed, opened my notebook, and wrote, "Next steps." The first tremor of purpose steadied my heart, turning suspicion into a calm, deliberate plan. By the time dawn's first light sifted through my study window, the weight of betrayal had transformed into crystal clarity. I poured myself a cup of black coffee, its bitterness grounding me, and placed the silver tennis watch beside my laptop. The watch, once a tender reminder of her love, now served as a metronome for the methodical steps I would take. First, I retained counsel. At 10, I sat across from Laura Chen in her downtown Los Angeles law office. Her mahogany desk gleamed under recessed lights, and a wall of case files stood behind her. I slid my folder across, the cafe photo with Jessica and Coach Michael, printed Uber logs for late evening rides, bank statements marked with coffee shop charges, and screenshots from the hidden Courtmaster chat. Finally, I placed the tennis watch in a small velvet pouch as Exhibit A, the symbol of time stolen. Laura reviewed each exhibit in silence, her brow furrowing only slightly at the final item. "This is comprehensive," she said, voice calm. "Under attorney-client privilege, will preserve every piece. Next, drafting petitions for temporary custody and support, filing motions to freeze joint accounts, and requesting expedited hearings." She outlined our timeline: engagement letter today, petitions filed within 5 business days, and a hearing date set by month's end. Each prescribed step felt like a lifeline. Leaving her office, I felt the first lift of anxiety's weight. Betrayal had dictated my emotions, now, structure and process would guide my response. That afternoon, I summoned my brother David for a late lunch at our favorite deli. Over pastrami sandwiches and iced tea, I spread out floor plans of our home and detailed the camera placements I needed, one at the entryway where Jessica carried late-night mail, another overlooking our living room couch where she often worked on her laptop. David, once a hobbyist with electronics, agreed to take on the installation this weekend. His steady confidence mirrored mine, and I felt buoyed by his commitment. That evening, I met my longtime friend Sarah at her cozy Brentwood cafe. Sarah had trained as a psychologist before switching to academic research. She listened as I described the patterns I'd observed, how Jessica's laughter lost its spark when I called her, how she'd glance at her phone with a flicker of something I couldn't name. Over chamomile tea, Sarah offered behavioral insights: if you record her conversations in communal spaces, living room, kitchen, she can't claim an expectation of privacy. Use open-ended questions that invite unguarded responses. Her counsel bolstered my strategy: evidence needed to be both authentic and admissible. Saturday dawned clear, and David arrived with 2 compact, Wi-Fi-enabled cameras. We worked in tandem, he handling the wiring, me marking angles on the walls. One camera I placed discreetly above the fireplace mantel, the other tucked high in the foyer ceiling. Each feed tested crisp, date-stamped, motion-activated. Underneath, I slid a small digital recorder into a decorative glass bowl, its microphone primed to capture any late-night conversations. By midday, our home felt secure, its shadows monitored, its walls attentive witnesses. Back in my study, I tackled the digital archives. I backed up Jessica's work email logs, where I suspected Michael had sent late-night message notifications, onto an encrypted external drive. Next, I compiled the Uber receipts, cafe statements, and screenshot files into a single folder labeled Evidence, Do Not Delete. Using a checksum utility, I verified each file's integrity, then copied the folder onto 2 USB keys, labeling them Q1 and Q2. I placed the keys, the velvet pouch containing the tennis watch, and a sealed envelope of paper receipts into a small safe bolted beneath my desk. Each click of lock mechanism sounded like a promise: nothing could be lost or tampered with. Monday morning, I met neighbor and part-time notary Jenna in her sunlit living room. I presented her with 2 documents drafted by Laura. Custody and visitation proposal. Joint legal custody for decisions on education and health. Primary physical custody with me, Jessica granted structured visitation every other weekend and alternating holidays. Temporary child support per California guidelines, with spousal support pending final asset division decree. Asset division spreadsheet. Marital home equity proposed split, 60% to me, reflecting my primary custodial role, 40% to Jessica. Retirement and savings accounts frozen as of petition date, each spouse retaining separate funds. Personal property, workshop tools and the tennis watch assigned to me, Jessica's art collection and jewelry to her. Jenna stamped and signed each page, her embossed seal transforming ink into enforceable documents. As she handed me the envelopes, I felt the shift from vulnerability to authority. That afternoon, I met financial planner Marcus Reyes at his office overlooking Beverly Hills. He and I reviewed the asset spreadsheet and bank statements. Marcus ran projections. Home equity, current market valuation and potential buyout scenarios, including a mortgage refinance to secure my share. Retirement funds, tax implications of retaining separate 401k balances. Joint savings, recommended freeze and establishment of escrow for childcare expenses. He prepared a concise report and sent it to Laura, ensuring the financial aspects of my case were airtight. Walking out, I carried a sheet summarizing future cash flows, proof that not only my daughter's well-being but my own future was meticulously planned. By Wednesday, my study had become command central. 2 monitors displayed camera feeds, a corkboard held pinned timelines and color-coded charts, the tennis watch and music box lay side by side, symbols of what was broken and what I planned to rebuild. I rehearsed my opening statement aloud. On June 22 at 9:18 p.m., Exhibit A, the surveillance camera at the front entrance recorded Ms. Williams arriving with Coach Michael, rather than returning directly home as represented. Exhibit B, Uber logs, show her rides at 9:45 p.m. and 11:07 p.m. Exhibit C, bank statements, confirm evening cafe charges. My voice grew steadier with each pass, the tremor of betrayal replaced by the authority of evidence. By evening, Laura emailed the hearing date, July 15 at 1:30 p.m., and reminded me to submit final exhibits by July 8. I updated my master list, double-checked all seals, and crossed off each preparatory task. The anxiety that once threatened to overwhelm me had yielded to structured determination. In less than a week, I had transformed from a man adrift in shock to one anchored by a deliberate plan. Each signature, each recorded clip, each notarized proposal laid another stone in the foundation of my reclamation. The silver tennis watch had moved from tender keepsake to Exhibit A, its ticking a steady reminder that time, and trust, could be accounted for and, ultimately, reclaimed. As the city lights twinkled outside my window, I closed my notebook on that final entry, prepared for hearing, evidence secured, network in place, resolve unwavering. I arrived at Whitman and Reeves' conference room at 1:30 p.m. sharp. On the polished oak table lay three objects: the silver tennis watch, our anniversary gift, resting beside the golf ball-sized sugar jar ashtray from that Logan Square cafe, and our framed wedding photo. The morning sun slanted through floor-to-ceiling windows, cutting light into neat stripes across the evidence. My wife entered with her lawyer at her side, her gaze flicking nervously to the items before settling on me. Attorney Lou began in a measured tone, "We'll review exhibits A through D, then discuss a settlement." She clicked the remote. Exhibit A appeared on the screen, the photograph from June 22, 9:18 p.m., showing Jessica and Coach Michael pressed close in that dim cafe booth, the ashtray and sugar jar between them. Jessica's color drained from her cheeks. Lou advanced to Exhibit B, the Uber logs, rides at 9:45 p.m. and 11:07 p.m., both charged to their account. I slid the printed receipts toward Jessica. "These confirm your movements after our son's bedtime," I said quietly. "You said you were home helping him." Her attorney flipped through the pages. Jessica's eyes flicked to our wedding photo. I reached forward, lifted it, and placed it before her. "This photo," I said, voice calm, "was taken on our wedding day, our promise captured in light." I tapped the silver frame. "That promise was entrusted to you." I set the photo on her side of the table, then tapped the ashtray. "And this," I said, lifting it, "held your secret moments." I returned it to the table and clicked to Exhibit C, the bank statements showing evening cafe charges. "You told me these runs were for inspiration," I said, "but the dates and times don't match any work obligation." Jessica swallowed, gaze fixed on the sugar jar's empty rim. Lou clicked to Exhibit D, the chat logs from at Courtmaster, messages like, "Can't wait to see you tonight," and "This feels dangerous," in the best way. Each line scrolled across the screen like a silent confession. I remained still. Then I placed the silver tennis watch in front of Jessica. "This was my timepiece," I said softly, "marking every serve our son learned, every anniversary we celebrated." I tapped its band. "Tonight, it marks a new beginning." Lou slid the settlement sheet across: joint legal custody, primary physical custody with me, equitable property division, structured visitation, and support terms. Jessica's hand trembled as she reached for the silver pen. Once, that pen had signed our mortgage; today, it sealed her accountability. She exhaled, signed, and our lawyer stamped the agreement. No outburst. No tears from me, only the soft click of pen on paper and the quiet closing of a chapter. As we rose, I offered Jessica a nod, acknowledgement, not anger. Outside, the sun glinted off the ashtray and the watch, silent witnesses to both betrayal and the unwavering resolve that brought me here. A week after the settlement, I sat at our glass dining table, the court's final decree in my hands. Its pages outlined joint legal custody, primary physical custody granted to me, and a clear visitation schedule for Jessica. Our home, once a shared sanctuary, was now mine, with her financial share held in escrow. Retirement and savings accounts were split equitably, and child and spousal support were set on a fixed schedule, deposited directly each month to ensure our son's needs were met. I exhaled, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders, order restored where chaos had threatened. On the table before me lay 3 items: the silver tennis watch, gleaming under the mid-afternoon sun, the small sugar jar ashtray, now empty and polished, and our wedding photo, its frame newly upright and unflinching. Each represented a chapter of our story: promise, betrayal, and accountability. That afternoon, I returned to my garage workshop, the place I'd retreated when grief threatened to overwhelm me. I retrieved my chisels and sandpaper and set to work on a simple project, transforming the tennis watch's band into a keepsake pendulum for the music box I'd begun months ago. With deliberate strokes, I sanded the metal, removing tarnish and inscribing the words "Time Reclaimed" on its inner clasp. As dust swirled and my breath steadied, I felt the familiar thrum of purpose return. Saturday evening, I hosted a small gathering in the backyard, just 2 close friends and my father, whose steady presence had anchored me. We grilled chicken and laughed under string lights, trading stories that no longer felt tinged with sorrow. My son chased fireflies across the lawn, his laughter a bright counterpoint to every echo of betrayal. When he bounded over, beaming, I handed him the newly finished music pendulum box and showed him how to open it. He tucked a small tennis ball he'd won in practice beside the pendulum and grinned. "For good times, Dad," he declared. My chest swelled with pride and relief. Sunday morning dawned gentle and golden. I launched my blog, Rally Point, with a post titled, "Serving Change, Rebuilding After Betrayal." I outlined the precise steps I'd taken, gathering evidence, consulting counsel, preserving every detail, and crafting a life defined by intentional actions rather than emotional fallout. Within hours, messages appeared: "Your calm guide gave me direction. I never imagined I could trust again. Thank you for showing resilience through reason." A community formed around shared purpose rather than shared pain. That evening, I walked my son to the neighborhood courts for his first post-settlement lesson. The sky glowed pink as the lights clicked on overhead. I strapped the tennis watch pendulum to my wrist and watched him practice serves. Each forehand and backhand seemed to echo my own journey, precision born of patience, strength drawn from disciplined resolve. Back home, I placed the pendulum watch beside our wedding photo and the sealed decree on the mantel. In their silent company stood promise, judgment, and renewal. I sat in my favorite armchair, inhaled deeply, and tasted hope instead of bitterness. Time's steady tick felt no longer like a countdown of loss, but a pulse of possibility. In that hush, I whispered to the empty room, "We move forward, together." And as the world outside settled into night, I finally felt at peace.